Roger Margolis here at Strata in New York 2018. I'm here with Ashish Verma, who's Managing Director of Analytics Plus Cognitive. I like the plus sign. Who's going to talk to me about the age of width. So what is the age of width?
It's interesting you ask, Roger, because if you look at what we're talking about when we say the age of width, for us, it translates to a few different things in the world of computing today. So today, if you were to look at humans in conjunction with technology, the things that they're attempting to do, it's reimagining what was possible. And when we talk about the age of width, that is what we imply, and we'll give you examples shortly about it. But in reality, it's also about, the whole hype about humans replacing machines. It's not really about humans replacing machines. It's about humans and machines working in ways together to uncover things that were not done before, right? And whether it's about innovation or new ways of doing things, all of those possibilities. And we also think of this is what has always been true about width and the power of humans and width, and it's to the core of many of the inventions that we don't even think about, right? Whether it was Henry Ford's assembly line, couldn't have been done alone with just the fact that we had Industrial Revolution, right? It needed humans with machines to get to that. So that's pretty much what we are talking about when we talk about the age of width. The power of human innovation with cognitive technology to bring us to something that is possible that couldn't have been done before.
So it sounds like kind of an augmentation approach.
That's correct.
Instead of a replacement.
That's correct. It's about augmentation as opposed to replacement.
Okay. So in general, you're talking about this kind of helper function. But specifically, how does it relate to kind of data architecture and analytics?
Yeah. I'll give you some things that are pretty apparent in our portfolio, and it'll probably start to make sense. So most clients that we work with today, the data footprint is roughly doubling in a period of 8 to 12 months. 8 months if you're curating external data sets, those that originate outside your organization, plus what you do internally. And 10 to 12 months if you are just mining the footprint of new sensing and signals that you want to do for data and analytics. So if you were to look at the volume of what data is happening within the ecosystems of most organizations, it's double the volume than you started with within the time frame of less than 12 months. The crux of the issue here is if you look at how legacy analytic applications were built, they were built towards humans curating data set by domain to derive insights, which is no longer a reality to be able to attempt to do in any organization. So when we talk about voluminous data that's being accumulated through all these external sensors, that's the kind of architecture footprint that we're talking about, where you don't rely on human beings alone to curate all the data sets into its meaning, independent of where you put it, right? So whether the destination is a cloud or whether the destination is an on-premise Hadoop distribution, independent of those, I think what is about to happen, and we have a few bots that actually do this, is be able to curate data services and data engineering from a source system to or an RDBMS or a file or whatever it may be to a target state. And that could be a file, that could be an RDBMS, that could be Hadoop, that could be S3, that could be a Hive table. Built with the perception of the fact that if you're going to attempt to do this sort of experiment with this kind of volume, a digital FDE to start some aspect of that curation is probably a reality, and that's what we're talking about. Now, it's highly unlikely that 100% of the data engineering and pipeline can be written by a bot or a digital FDE like we speak about. But it's quite possible that you should be able to attempt to do 30 to 40% of that on an automated task, right? Which sort of begins to make sense when we talk about humans with technology.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Just if it does any documentation of what columns and tables appear would just be a great feature, because I know engineers often leave that to, I'll never get to it. So you've described kind of how this all works. Do you have any examples with customers of how this is being implemented in practice?
Sure. I'll give you a few examples that probably start to make sense. So we were working with a beverage manufacturer, and we did something to the tune of about 15% ROI just by automation of something that we're doing with human middleware, right? So if you can think about sort of the kind of capital that frees up for an organization which has, it's a well-known fact, most IT organizations are cost centers, right? and the pressure on economics and total costs of operations to do something better, cheaper, faster everyday reality for most CIOs. So that's sort of an example of where we were able to take 15% through automation, which would have not been possible if they continued down the path. There's a provider for which we basically got rid of 20% of their costs. It's cost to provide care, just through simple coordination of what happened in their back office through the different components of the care that is provided. And then, we talk about the airline industry all the time, and, some of the stuff that we do and some they do themselves, but, just virtual agents from the standpoint of when they communicate to you through your smartphone or an app to turn around and say your flight is delayed because you're a frequent flyer customer, and that's, how we provide service. So, I mean, if you look at these examples, it's beginning to thread sort of the storyline of what is possible through something that's rules or process intensive that can be automated, right? So that is sort of one kind of cognitive, which is sort of, what we call the horizon one of cognitive, right? Still not autonomous, still not intelligent enough to be able to do what a human mind does. That's the second tranche that we talk about, which is where all of this is headed. And to get to that second tranche, I think it's pretty evident that you're probably going to have to, first and foremost, get your data and analytics strategy correct from the standpoint of being able to collect all of this to be able to train data or train algorithms against that data set. So I think that second part is what is being promised, is what will arrive in the next 2 to 5 years, and pretty evident in our portfolio organizations that have started along this journey that's probably a reality for them.
That's great. So what does the enlightened customer think about with the age of with?
And it's interesting you talk about customer, and I'm assuming you're talking about the Deloitte client portfolio as opposed to customer.
I should have said it more generally. What does the enlightened organization think in the age of with?
There are a few realities for which the conversation is pivoting around. First and foremost, that this is going to be an environment that's going to be very hybrid from the standpoint of a technology footprint, right? So whether it's a multi-cloud environment or it's a hybrid environment of some premise of on-premise and cloud technology, or is it IaaS for some aspects of cloud where the analytics application works as a PaaS service, all of those, right? So which naturally brings into play the conversation about portability, right? So multi-cloud, yes, a great strategy from the standpoint of being able to have for an organization to be able to delve into some of these challenges from a procurement standpoint or pricing standpoint. But yeah, portability, and people think about portability as just about, if I containerize it, I don't have to worry about the interdependencies of the 7 different softwares that run underneath it. Yeah, that is true, but data portability is a very huge aspect of this conversation. So it's a challenge in itself if you're going to operate in a multi-cloud framework and certain components or segments of data reside in certain clouds. How do you assimilate and curate all of this for the unified view for a business user that comes from the right side of this picture? So I think if we were to look at the challenges, I would say target operating model from the standpoint of figuring out in this world of DevOps and continuous integration, continuous deployment, what does the skill set look like? What does your target operating model look like? How can you do automated deployment? How can you run the operations of this thing and put it into production when you've gotten past your IaaS into PaaS to being able to migrate those applications? I think all of those are things that people talk to us about. And all of the things are the challenges that people are trying to figure out, what is the right answer? And clearly, there's not a right answer. I'm sure there's a range of answers depending upon what you're trying to tackle, but those are some of the things that we dealt with.
That's great. Well, thanks for sharing this age of with discussion with us. Thanks.
Happy to. Pleasure to meet you.